Good morning, everyone. This is a public meeting of the Indiana Arts Commission Advisory Review Panel convened to review FY24-25 Arts Organization Support Grant Program applications for Region 7. This is panel 2 of 3. I am Maya Michelson, Executive Director of the Indiana Arts Commission, and I'm serving as today's review panel moderator. Today is May 3rd, 2023. 10 a.m. Eastern Time, and we're meeting online and streaming live for applicants and the public to observe. Just as a quick reminder, there is to be no contact between the panel and the audience about the disposition of applications either before, during, or after the panel meeting. This meeting is being recorded and will be made available upon request. At this time, I'm going to invite each of the panelists and then our IAC regional partner and IAC staff to introduce themselves. Panelists will state their name, occupation, where they're from, and staff will state their title and role. We'll start with the panel first. I'll introduce each of you by your first name so you can share a bit about yourself, including where you're zooming from today. We'll start with Shelley.
Hi, I'm Shelley Gottlieb. I'm a business psychologist and adjunct psychology professor, zooming from Carmel.
Welcome, Shelley. So glad you're here.
Thank you.
Next is Mariah.
Hi, I'm Mariah Miller. I am the Creative Engagement Administrator at the Harrison Center. I am originally from Naples, Florida, and I'm zooming from Indianapolis's near east side.
Welcome, Mariah. Thanks so much. Kyle.
Good morning. I'm Kyle Hendricks. I'm the manager of community impact at Heritage Fund, the community foundation of Bartholomew County, and I am zooming this morning from our hometown in Columbus, Indiana.
Welcome, Kyle. Thanks for being with us. And our last panelist is Jennifer.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Knopsey, and I am the collections manager at the Children's Museum of Indianapolis, where I am zooming from today. And I am from Alexandria, Indiana.
Welcome, Jennifer. Thank you. Let's see, our regional partner for Region 7, Ryan.
My name is Ryan Shelton. I am the partnership manager for Nickel Plate Arts, which manages art in Eastern Hamilton County, and I'm streaming today from Noblesville.
Thank you so much, Ryan, for everything you have done in support of this panel and for the Regional Arts Partnership Program. IAC staff, Eric.
Hi, everyone. I'm Eric Ashby, Grants and Research Manager for the Indiana Arts Commission, doing all the tech things today, coming to you from Bloomington, Indiana.
Thanks, Eric. And Paige.
Welcome, everybody. I'm Paige Sharp, Deputy Director of Programs for the IAC, and I will be here to provide any policy clarifications as needed.
Great. So now we'll begin the panel review. And for our panelists and for those watching the live stream, this is how the process will work. The panel will discuss each application, and the assigned reader will provide a summary of their review before discussion moves to the full panel. Once the panel has completed their discussion, they'll have a few moments to update their scores in the online grant management system. As the panel moderator, to you panelists, I encourage you to be conversational in your discussion. Feel free to ask questions of one another and chime in when you have a thought to add. While we want to be mindful of time and focus on the highlights of each application, I'm here to ensure the discussion includes each of our 4 evaluation criteria: organizational excellence, inclusion, diversity, equity, and access, otherwise known as IDEA, artistic quality, and community engagement. If one of our panelists has a conflict of interest with an application, they'll be placed in the waiting room until we're ready for the next application. And we do have several of those on this panel, so we will talk through that process when we get there. Are there any questions from our panelists before we get started? All right, hearing none, let's begin. On screen is the list of the applications that will be reviewed today. They are more or less in alphabetical order. So we'll take that screen share off now, and we'll start with our first application, which is American Limes Theater. And Shelley, you are the reader for that application. Please start when you're ready.
Yes, so for organizational excellence, my comments included that this was pretty strong overall. I did have one suggestion that I'd like to see a little bit more specifically stated of why their work was important to their community, but I did see the capacity to carry out their work and their mission, and a high level of commitment noted and accomplishment as evidenced by the Pulitzer. Clear explanation of the general financial practices and needs was provided, and a demonstration of the healthy growth over time, including the pandemic challenges that were specific to their organization. And they also included a recognition of the balance between their financial incentives and the underserved populations when assigning their ticket prices. And they talked about how they specifically kind of addressed that issue. And then would you like me to move on to my comments?
Please. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Sorry. So for IDEA, they gave a really full transparency of their current limitations in that capacity. And they have existing strategies targeted to improve diversity, and they're networking to kind of broaden that audience base currently. They do have a plan to diversify their board representation as it stands, and they're collecting audience demographic information, and they included that. And I noted that they have measurable goals for 2023 actors, board, and staff. They didn't just have general goals, they actually had measurable goals. They also had a discussion in their idea section of neurodiversity. And I did have just one suggestion. I'd like to see something included a little bit more specific of other diversity. In explaining plans to diversify internally in terms of board recruitment and hiring practices. They didn't touch on those as much, but artistic quality comments, I had that they have very high standards. I thought this was really strong. They had very high standards of structured protocol and professionalism, and they talked about that in detail. And they gave specific examples of their relevant current topics portrayed through the educational content that they were providing, open to public discussions, forums, and that they provided an extremely strong argument for their audience participation. And then I had one suggestion to include a little bit more information on the qualifications of those involved in terms of our rubric for the artistic expertise, just to kind of make maybe a little bit more detailed argument for their artistic quality that they were providing. And then for community engagement, again, a really good job overall. I thought it was strong. Representation at community outreach, that was discussed a lot in this section. University campus visits, and they talked about established community partnerships, multiple organizations, performing arts, and they collaborated with school districts. They were talking about how they were trying to network within their community and reach different members of the community, continued networking through local and national relations, and then applying topics to local populations. And they gave specific examples of that, and then applying the community feedback that they were receiving to kind of apply that and move forward with that.
Great, thank you, Shelley. Yeah.
Thank you.
Now we'll open it up to the full panel for additional comments, other observations on this application. Just jump in.
Great. I thought the mission statement, the narrative, and the examples throughout were specific and evocative. I felt like I really got to learn about their organization and hear their story, and they told that in a clear way. I think throughout the different sections that was true. And I agree with a lot of what Shelley said. One thing that I thought that was strong about this organization was their partnerships. They seem to be a team player with other local theater organizations. And because of the unique work that they do in touching on different social issues or things that are relevant to American life, I think that they could benefit from partnerships, more partnerships outside of the theater space. I loved what they were doing with their education around the topic of immigration and working with that organization. Would love to see more work like that. But overall, I thought really enjoyed reading this.
Thanks, Mariah. Other comments?
I agree with Mariah and everything that's already been said about the organization. I thought that from an excellence perspective and an artistic quality perspective, that this organization has a really bold mission statement and really tries to carry through on that through their activities. I think that the engagement that they seek in the community to make their art responsive was really exciting as well. And I thought that that really helped me to better understand not only how they put on the art that they do, but really how they connect with the community that they're in to really see that art through and activate it.
Great. Thank you, Kyle. Other comments on this application?
I just will say I agree with all the comments made thus far. I really did appreciate that transparency with IDEAI or ID. We call it DEAI here, so
It's all good.
yeah. But I really like that transparency, and it wasn't just a statement. Like Shelley said, there were measurable, plans in place. And lastly, with community engagement, I liked that they talked about we're not in competition, that it really is truly collaborative. So yeah, I thought it was a strong application.
Great. All right. Thanks for the discussion on this application. So hearing no other comments, I will ask the panelists to take a couple of minutes and finalize their scores. Okay, it looks like we're done. Let me know if anyone needs any additional time. It looks like everybody is completed. So our next application is Asante Art Institute, and we have a conflict of interest, Mariah Miller. So we're going to put Mariah Miller in panelist limbo for a few minutes while we talk about that this application, and she is gone. So Kyle, you are the first reader for Asante, so whenever you're ready.
Sure. So Asante Art Institute, looking at the different areas of evaluation, starting with organizational excellence. I thought that this organization clearly defined and organized its programs around its larger mission. I thought that they, have a history, about 30 years of history to have really, strengthened their organization. So they've been around for a little longer than maybe some of the other organizations that we'll be reviewing this morning. I would have liked to have understood. I got a pretty clear idea of their current business model. I would have liked to have seen maybe a little bit more detail around their financial position to really better understand kind of how financially healthy the organization is. But they did mention that they will be sourcing some strategic planning efforts and really working to think very broadly about where their organization currently is and where it can go. IDEA, I thought that they focused their programming and support very well. They have a very specific population that they've identified as low-income African American. I think that the work in IDEA is applaudable, and I think that they're doing great work specifically to that population that they have identified to serve. I do think that there are some nuances missing from their responses that could dive deeper into the overall African American identity. I would have liked to have seen more information about how they serve young men, biracial, LGBTQ+, who are also a part of the African American community as well. Artistic quality, I thought that they provide very focused and quality offerings through their programming. They source teachers or instructors well and students well through the programs that they do have. Community engagement. I was really impressed with how they gather input from both inside their organization and outside their organization to inform their operations in programming. And I thought that some of the examples of partnerships that they have across the Indianapolis area with other nonprofits was also very impressive, and I think bodes well for the overall success of their organization. I think those are the majority of my comments.
Great, thank you, Kyle. We'll open it up to the full panel for additional comments on this application.
My comments were really similar to Kyle's, especially the last two sections. So I agree with him, especially the internal, external, and the metrics comments.
Great. Thank you, Shelley. Other comments?
Under the artistic quality, I really thought they made a strong statement saying that their performers are change agents for the community, and you can kind of see that woven throughout the entire application. And I really liked their emphasis. It's not just how many programs they're doing, how well they are, but are people better off for seeing that? So I just thought it was very inspiring what they're reaching for.
Thank you, Jennifer. Any other comments on this application? Okay, hearing none, I'll ask our panelists to finalize scores. Okay, it looks like everyone is done. We'll bring Mariah back, and there she is. Welcome back, Mariah. All right, we will move on to our next application, which is Brick Street Poetry. And Jennifer, you are the reader whenever you're ready.
Okay. I believe that the applicant did an excellent job of describing their mission and work. I think that throughout the application, they demonstrated that they are committed to educating and sharing their love of poetry to a wide variety of audiences. I think that the IDEA initiatives, they clearly demonstrate their commitment to that because they focused really on underrepresented communities and some that are largely kind of forgotten, like their emphasis on people who are formerly incarcerated, the Islamic refugee community. And I like how they said that being a small and nimble organization, they're easily able to adjust their programming initiatives. And I think their commitment to poetry being for all ages is shown in their outreach to retirement communities as well. And the applicant did a really good job of stating how they attract talent and also pay and nourish that talent. I would like to have learned more specifics about the artist and maybe the different types of works. And I do think, I have to say, I think the podcast series, that is very interesting. And throughout the application, again, there are multiple examples of community partnerships, and their partnerships with schools is also impressive. So that's what I have.
Great, thank you, Jennifer. So we'll open it up to the full panel for additional discussion on this one.
I agree with Jennifer's comments. I thought this was a great application overall. I think they're doing really good work. This is, I think, more of a comment for the process of the IAC necessarily, because for this specific grant and many others, I kept wanting to know more about the current financial health of the organization and how, if we're asking to gift funds for or grant funds for operational dollars, I think we need to get a lot more clear on what the current financial health of the organization is. And you can go really far into that, and we don't want to, split hairs necessarily. But I think simply asking for an operational budget and, a paragraph on the current state isn't enough. And so I was having a hard time really understanding, specifically with this request, kind of what their current financial position was in a really holistic way. And so I think that's an area that could be improved on their application and many others, but I also think that it has more to do with how the application was presented to the applicants moving forward.
Okay, but speaking specifically to this application, Kyle, you would have wanted to see a little bit, you wanted to see a little bit more detail around their current financial situation.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Other comments on this application?
I thought this one was really strong, like Jennifer stated in the beginning. I thought the organizational excellence, they did a really strong argument for the importance of their mission, like how they were affecting the community, the cognitive benefits. They really backed that up. And I thought, and I know she mentioned this, but just to piggyback, I thought they did a really good job of showing the positives of all of their angles. Like this, we're very small, but we can be flexible because we're small. And like, we were able to reach these different audiences that other people aren't reaching. So I thought they really presented their mission in a unique kind of boutique category, if you will. And I thought that was a really interesting read. And I thought I basically what Jennifer said, but I kind of used my own wording, but it went noticed. Like I definitely had some specific comments related to what she noticed as well.
Thank you, Shelley. Mariah.
Yeah, I also enjoyed reading this, and I think I loved hearing how much love they have for their mission and for poetry. I think that while I think their application does clearly state what need they are fulfilling and how it serves their community. Specifically under the question, why is it important? I would have liked to have heard more about like specific examples of how it impacts their audience, not just why poetry in general is good. Because I think that in other places in the application, they touched on that. And I just would have liked to have heard a little bit more about like stories of some of their audience members.
Great. Thank you, Mariah. Any other comments on this application? Okay, I would ask the panelists to take a couple of minutes and finalize their scores. Okay, it looks like everyone is done. So we will move on to our next application, which is the Buck Creek Players. And Mariah, you're the reader whenever you're ready. You're muted, friend.
Great. Okay, thank you. Okay, so I wanted to congratulate this organization on 50 years. That's very exciting. They list clear activities in their organizational excellence section that support their mission. I think they excel in developing and maintaining active volunteers and members. That was really impressive. And I like that they included examples like their internships and how that provides lifelong learning opportunities to multiple actors and stages throughout their career. And I think it's also impressive that they have maintained this volunteer base for so long. I love how they talk about the importance of their location, the way that they see that as a mission in this underserved area, providing important resources. And I think that they are committed to financial stability and understand their need. It does sound like they have a big need, and I do understand that in costs of inflation have been a struggle for all of us. Under IDEA, I was pleased to see their diversity efforts and partnerships. I was wondering if there were, they listed some examples of ways that partnerships have helped increase diversity. They listed a specific one about working with disability groups. Mentioned that they were still working on racial diversity, and I was wondering if they could find partnerships similar to the one with disability groups to help with that. I think that they are taking good steps, but I would have liked to have heard a little bit more concrete examples. I think the concept of the blind casting is interesting, and it sounds like there has been some successes there. I also appreciate that they included audience demographic information. I think it shows that they are taking this intentionally, being intentional about this. I would have also appreciated seeing demographics for cast and crew or volunteers. In terms of artistic quality, I think, again, just very impressed by their commitment to both quality and to investing in their volunteers. It really invests in their volunteers, and I think that pays off in quality and commitment. I also appreciated hearing how shows are selected and that directors are invited to submit their own shows. It really involves the artists in this. And I was also excited to hear about producing small and original plays, which I know can be riskier from a revenue perspective, but that they take what their directors want into heart. Under community engagement, again, back to the partnerships, I thought I loved reading about the partnerships that they are making with other organizations in their community and what it's meant to them. And I think that they clearly show they weren't just looking for partners to serve their own purposes, but to be good partners. I was wondering a little bit if there were any formal channels for feedback, like surveys or things that are anonymous. Just would be a little bit helpful if anyone was concerned about voicing a negative opinion. But overall, I think strong application, loved hearing what they mean to their community, and I think that's pretty clearly demonstrated.
Great, thank you, Mariah. We'll open it up to the full panel. Additional discussion on this application.
I really liked on the artistic quality, they really provided a lot of information on skill development. They talked about the assisting, the shadowing, the internship program, and they talked about the history of recognition and the awards received and specific examples and the expertise of the board. But I think that shadowing and skill development that they really spelled out for me, kind of, I think, made their program easier for me as a reader to understand for this grant. And I think that section stood out to me for this one. Thank you.
Thank you, Shelley. Other comments?
Well, I think I'm going to echo what everybody said. I really did like the learn by doing and how they said we grow our own. So I think that probably, speaks to the longevity and why people are so committed to this organization. And I did like in the community engagement how they try to solicit feedback from within, because I think that's often forgotten. Like you're always, wanting this external, but to get that internal feedback of how they could do better. So I like that they included that.
Thank you, Jennifer. Any other comments? Okay, hearing none, I'll ask the panelists to take a minute to finalize their scores. Okay, we're going to move on to our next application, which is the Carmel Community Players. And Shelley, you are the reader whenever you're ready.
Okay, for sorry, organizational excellence. I noted that they had a demonstration of long-term success, 30 years. And they did include an explanation of their fiscal responsibility. This one is completely volunteer run. And they provided that. I did have a suggestion to include more specific examples of their productions, their benefit to their community, and their overall impact. They discussed cultural and educational principles in their mission that they didn't really specify in this section. So I would have liked to have seen that a little bit more clearly stated, and just a little bit more stronger argument there. Just a little bit more detail. And then in the idea, they did talk about zero precasting and the intention to invite all populations to audition. They do have a wide range of ages. I would have liked to have seen a little bit more detail in this section about including maybe collecting more demographic information. If they didn't include it, so I wasn't aware of that. And including some more specific examples of the idea principles that they're implementing. A little bit more detail again. They're taking steps to meet the needs of the underrepresented groups, which is really good. But maybe a suggestion to discuss the diversity within the board and the committee members and kind of get it started internally and and working in more. And then for artistic quality, they have collection and application of director, actor, and patron feedback, neutral feedback received from association judges, and I had a suggestion to include more specific evidence and justification of the artistic quality training and expertise of performers. They didn't really include a lot in this grant for that section. So again, just I would have liked to have seen some more detail in this section. For community engagement, they do have a close working relationship with the city and the community that they're in, and they implement patron surveys and public input on their show schedule, which I thought, kind of got the community involved in what they would potentially be seeing. I would like to see a discussion of cultivating more community partnerships with performing arts nonprofit sector and establishing networking relationships, and becoming just more involved in general community outreach, and improving more specific examples for public input, community feedback. A little bit more detail. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Shelley. Just to clarify, I think in the artistic quality section, you were just saying that particular section just needed more detail. That maybe there wasn't quite enough for you to apply the criteria because of just the detail maybe was just needed a little bit more there.
Yes.
Okay. Great. Additional comments by the panel?
I think overall, just especially like and the artistic and the community engagement, some more specific examples would be nice of that work, to demonstrate their work. And maybe also with idea demographics would kind of be nice, just having some extra information.
Right. Great. Thank you, Jennifer.
I agree with those things. I think that there is evidence from this application that this community is doing amazing work, hard things. We know what it takes to be a theater organization here. And there's hints of it, but I think adding a little bit more specificity could really help us understand. And they do, like they mentioned, again, I know we already talked about demographics being helpful, but they mentioned being very diverse. They use those words, but I'm not sure what that means to them as an organization.
Yeah, great. That's really helpful, Mariah. Thank you. Just more detail, specifics. When you make a statement like that, back it up with some demographic information or additional narrative detail. Thank you. Any other comments by the panel? Okay, hearing none, I'll ask the panel to finalize their scores. Okay, looks like we're ready to move on. Our next application is Carmel Repetory Theater, and Kyle, you are the reader for that application whenever you're ready.
Sure, thank you. Overall, I thought this was a really good application. It's clear that they are providing a need specifically in classical theater. And in the Indianapolis area, they're organized specifically around their main kind of event, which is Bard Fest, and take good measure to make this programming accessible to the community. I would have liked, from an organizational excellence perspective, and this kind of relates to IDEA and artistic quality as well, but how they proactively engage with specific communities like low to moderate income, schools, et cetera, to provide their art to those groups who are historically underrepresented. In IDEA, it's clear that this organization has taken clear steps to further their IDEA through operational and policy changes in recent years, and they have a clear understanding of their current audience. I would have liked to have seen the current makeup of artists broken down demographically in the same way that they presented their audience. But overall, I thought that they are, starting off on a great path in this area. And I would encourage the organization to keep pushing further with that work in subsequent years. Moving on to artistic quality, I thought the specific examples that they shared made this a strong response, specifically for artistic quality. I would like to, in future years, see this organization exploring new ways to provide artistic quality as it relates to work in inclusion, diversity, equity, and access. Community engagement. It's clear that the organization has internal feedback channels established. I think they could do more to solicit and incorporate feedback from communities and audiences outside of those working, outside of the organization. But overall, I thought it was a very strong application.
Great, thank you, Kyle. Additional comments on this one?
I think the thing that impressed me the most that just stuck out with this one for me was they talk about it in organizational effectiveness, but the balance between the fiscal responsibility and ethical principles of paying their artists and the compensation that they are awarding them. And I thought it really stuck out. They really argue that well.
Yeah, especially, I agree, especially given their organizational budget. I was impressed that they made that a commitment and that they don't seem to be sacrificing any artistic integrity for that. It actually, I think, improves what they're doing. I think that I know that they have partnerships with schools and Arts for Lawrence, and that the festival goes there. And I just would have liked to have heard what their actual presence at those partners were and how they chose those partners.
Thank you, Mariah.
With IDEA, I think that it was really strong when they just stated, again, with transparency, that Shakespeare and classical theater has historically been like an ethnocentric and colonized space. And so kind of, stating that, and then, kind of taking steps, like Kyle said, to plan for the future, to how you broaden that. So I really like that transparency right there.
Thank you, Jennifer. Any other comments on this application? All right. Hearing none, I'll ask our panelists to finalize their scores. Okay, our next application is the Central Indiana Dance Ensemble, and Jennifer, you are the reader for that application whenever you're ready.
I believe that the applicant provided an excellent overview of their organization, specifically focusing on providing a vehicle for children to be trained in dance principles, while also broadening audience acceptance and appreciation of dance. I really liked how they stated that they had always thought about ticket price being a barrier to people coming to the show, but they hadn't thought about people actually getting to the show. So kind of digging deeper there. And again, with the transparency, I like how they stated that they always thought they had been incorporating IDEA initiatives, but they realized that they hadn't dug deeper and that they need to. And then they talked about how they are forming IDEA subcommittees and, kind of recognizing champions within their own organization to help further that work. I really like the two programs that they listed as examples, working with Indie Hula, and then also their work on creating a sensory-friendly performance. I think they did a really good job of listing the skills and experience of their staff, which displays the artistic quality. They emphasize their commitment to continually enhance, teach, and create by looking for inspiration and guidance from outside the organization. And lastly, with community engagement, I think they do a solid job of detailing how they gather information through detailed surveys. And again, I like how they solicit internal feedback.
Great. Thank you, Jennifer. So we'll open it up to the full panel for additional comments on this application.
I agree with everything that Jennifer said, and I'll just add from the IDEA qualification that I thought it was really impressive for this specific organization that their executive leadership, their board of directors seems really bought into this as well. It's not just a programmatic thing, it's not a separate work stream, but it's something that their executive leadership is really fully committing to, which is, I think, is impressive.
Thank you, Kyle.
I also thought the partnership with Indie Hula was interesting. I would have liked to have heard what that partnership was like. And also I think that I thought the two constituencies was interesting, how they are both educating dancers and then also educating audience members and taking those shows to different schools. I was wondering about like diversity, like representation in their shows when they're like going to these schools. I think I would have liked to have heard a little bit more about that, or what the education around those shows was like when they are performing in those schools. I think that they take their work really seriously. But I think, which is amazing. But I also like that they are thinking about holistic wellness, and I loved hearing about what they were doing for mental wellness for dancers.
Thank you, Mariah. Other comments?
I also liked the discussion of potential neurodiversity inclusion in the future. They talked about, potentially opening that up, and they're kind of exploring that possibility. And they also talked about the impact they have long-term on the dancers that go off, after the program completes, and how this art form kind of stays with them, and that kind of lasting impression, which I think is important to include. And I think they stated that well as far as the organizational impact standpoint.
Thank you, Shelley. Other comments? Okay, hearing none, I will ask our panelists to finalize their scores. Okay, looks like we are ready to move on. Our next application is Christian Youth Theater, and Mariah, you are the reader for that application, so whenever you're ready.
Great. Okay, reading this application was very clear and concise. I understand the organization's mission and how the programs support that mission. They have a big impact with over 500 students each year. And I think they're working really hard to be creative and meet community needs through volunteers, partnerships, and kind of expanding their programming to serve neurodiverse youth. One of the main questions that I had under the organizational excellence section was how kids are sourced and selected, the cost to participate, and just sort of what it's like from an actor's standpoint. And then a little bit, just one thing that I noticed that was in the mission statement, but not necessarily in the overall organization, was what they mean by faith-based environment. But that overall, I think I understand the work that they're doing and working with youth. Under IDEA, I think, again, it is a very clear answer. They are committed to ensuring students of different backgrounds feel secure, safe, and accepted. And I, again, love the work with neurodiverse students and thinking about how they can meet those needs of a youth across the board. I also appreciate the option of free and reduced tuition. Had a question about how that was made available, or how the transparency, how families know. The organization does point out that they work in an area that is predominantly white and middle upper class, and that they are consistently brainstorming how to be inclusive, which I love that commitment. I would have liked to hear a little bit more like clear or specific goals other than just brainstorming. Under artistic quality, the show schedule was very helpful. I think I really understand what their year looks like, as well as how shows are selected, and I appreciate involving families in the selection process. I like the intentionality of having different seasons focus on different age and abilities. I think that does help for artistic quality, like thinking, how are we going to be the best we can be with this specific show, as well as combining them and giving actors of different levels the chance to interact. Also, the opportunity for growth that they offer to younger and new directors, and creating that pipeline, and again, investing in their participants. Under community engagement, I thought that they had a pretty sophisticated survey and evaluation process, which is really important. It's good to start with who they know, and I also appreciated the hype group, helping the youth to have a voice themselves and kind of creating that space for safety. You could tell that they are committed to that. I think the examples they gave were very illustrative. I loved hearing about how the youth helped, the input led to healthier food options that resulted from that survey. I also thought the organization had some interesting partnerships. I loved hearing about the moving company and how excited they were and how committed they were to your organization. And also how they invite, they're not just committed to those things themselves, they invite their donors and sponsors in to help with equity and community engagement as well.
Great. Thank you, Mariah. So we'll open it up to the full panel for additional comments on this application.
I agree with everything that Mariah said, and specifically around kind of understanding specifically how what they mean by faith-based in their mission statement, as well as what access for their programming looks like to various groups. They say that they do not discriminate, but how actively do they recruit in this area? And also just curious, looking at the social media and website channels that they provided on their application, it's clear that they proselytize. So again, just curious how they are eligible for government funding as a stated faith-based organization. And I know that the Arts IAC is discussing this, but I just wanted to state that question for anyone who may be reviewing this in the future as well.
Thank you, Kyle, for that comment. And all the applications that have gone, or that are going through the AOS organizational FY24-25 cycle have been deemed to be eligible based on our current guidelines and criteria to be considered an arts organization. So I appreciate you raising the question, but we have deemed it by our current guidelines to be eligible for funding. Any other questions or comments in particular by the panel on this application?
I really liked the amount of detail, like Mariah mentioned, and like the specific examples that they gave. And I liked that they had the tuition assistance. I just had one suggestion, just something to maybe consider is the, in regard to that population, if a child might need tuition assistance, to maybe consider waiving the parent volunteer requirement. Because I noticed that they had a requirement that every parent volunteer, and I thought that that population might, that might also kick out that potential. So I just have that in my comments that might, if you qualify for tuition assistance, then the parent is no longer required to volunteer. Just a suggestion.
Yeah.
And if they have it, then maybe just specifically state it in the grant application. They may already have that, but thank you.
Yep. Thanks. Any other discussion on this application? right. Hearing none, I'll ask our panelists to finalize their scores. Okay, it looks like everyone has done so, and we're ready to move on. Our next application is Claude McNeil, and Mariah has a conflict with that application and the subsequent two following. So we're going to put her in panelist limbo as we discuss this application and the next two after that. So for Claude McNeil, introductions, Shelley, you are the reader whenever you're ready.
This grant had so much detail. I loved reading it because I'm just all about it. I felt like they spelled it out for someone who had no idea about this organization. They made it so that you felt like you knew them, you knew their board, you knew their volunteers, you knew everything that they stood for. They really started off, so with the organizational excellence, they started off like really, I thought, demonstrating their stability. Founded in 2005. So, and they really clearly defined their divisions of programming and how different they were and what they do for the community, which is basically what that section is all about. So I thought that was really important. And they also showed the evidence of their organizational development with the notable growth, most of the notable growth in 2016 with the Performing Arts Initiative. And they talked about the, how much, currently serving up to 10,000 annually. They, I have so much for this one. Yeah, they talked about their employees, full-time, part-time, contract, their board meetings quarterly. They have a wide range of volunteers. They do have some board diversity objectives set. I had a suggestion to maybe set goals that are a little bit more measurable, because serving on boards, sometimes they set goals of increase board diversity. Well, that's really hard to measure, so maybe by 25% according to these metrics in the next 3 years or something just a little bit more objective. Just a suggestion. But they do have a strategic plan in place, so it may already be in there and just not in this grant. Specifically stated. An idea, they have a very large number of free and discounted admissions, free or highly discounted educational program. I did have the suggestion, just to clarify within this grant, for the purposes of this grant, a discounted rate or qualifying scale, because they said if you qualify, I don't know who qualifies. They did have the implication of ADA compliant venues. They have an ASL interpreter provided upon request. So it didn't say, but hopefully they are advertising that. Otherwise you wouldn't know to request it. But reaching that community, I know can be a little bit tricky. So you'd need to, really reach those people that would need to request it. Otherwise they won't even know to attend. They have engagement. They have specific action plans in step for recruiting employees with diverse representation. They already have those specific steps in place, and identifying schools that are most in need, which I was impressed by, and then kind of reaching out to those. They have the demographic information that's provided by the IPS student populations, and multiple specific variables provided for identifying the underserved populations. For the artistic quality, they said diverse casting. This one they probably could have been more specific about what that means, but it's in place for the Macbeth, and they have the summer camp. I liked how they were fostering the open discussions about the social issues that are surrounding health and education, and they talked about some really specific topics: bullying, violence, emotions. They had really specific examples. And they provided very specific qualifications, educational accomplishments, you know, really defending their artistic quality. And again, they were providing the feedback from not just the peers, but the students and the school administrators. And within the community, I commented that they had their annual community partner meetings, more application of feedback, catering to the requests, and they did have some specific examples of how they kind of modified to meet the needs. And again, just multiple partnerships with a mutually benefit and not just, you know, kind of what they could gain. But this one was very thorough and I liked that. It was really nice to read this one.
Good. Thank you, Shelley.
Thank
So
you.
we'll open it up to the full panel for other comments.
I agree. It was like they know who they are, what they do. They can tell you, you know, clearly you see what they do. And like you said, the community engagement, I believe they said like collaboration is critical to them and that long list of partners. And echoing what you said, I really like how it's so timely, the topics, and they work with like the schools and whoever, you know, their partner is to identify those topics. So yes, very strong application.
Great. Thank you, Jennifer.
I agree with everything that's already been said from Jennifer and Shelley. I was just really impressed, and specifically around just how collaborative of an organization that they are.
Great. Thank you, Kyle. So if there's no other discussion or comments, I'll ask our panelists to finalize their scores. Okay. We will move on to the next application. Festival Music Society, and Mariah has a conflict with that application, so she remains in panelist limbo in the waiting room. So Kyle, whenever you're ready.
Sure. Overall, very good application. From an organizational excellence perspective, it's clear that their programming is aligned with their mission. I really appreciated the financial information that they provided to give, you know, a pretty good broad view of, you know, where the financial health of the organization is. It looks like they have a really strong endowment that helps with their operational funds year over year. IDEA, they have a strong assessment of their current state of inclusion, diversity, equity, and access. And I think that's a really great start. It's clear that they've made this a priority and that they've really dug into kind of where they sit. In the future, I would like to see more actionable plans from the areas of growth that they've identified moving forward. But I think that, you know, it seems like they're, you know, at the start of their journey with this work, which is ultimately really great. Artistic quality, they had a strong description of the quality that they provide. I would like to better understand what processes are in place for their continuous improvement of their artistic quality. Which moves a little bit into the community engagement. They do provide strong examples of how they gather audience input and how they partner across the community. But again, you know, with that audience and student feedback specifically, I would like to just get a little bit more information about exactly how that feedback is implemented after it's documented, you know, how they utilize the feedback that they receive from the communities that they do engage with.
Great. Thank you, Kyle. So we'll open it up to the full panel for additional comments on this application.
I didn't really have much more than what Kyle has already said. The only thing that sticks out in my notes that he hasn't already said is that I appreciated their full transparency on lacking of current board diversity, and that they plan to really attack that they're aware of the issue that needs to be addressed, and that they plan to kind of take care of that in the future, and that they have a plan to address it. So I liked that.
Thank you, Shelley. Any other comments on this one? All right. Hearing none, I'll ask the panelists to finalize their scores for this application. Okay, our next application is the Fine Arts Society Indianapolis. And Jennifer, you are the reader for this application. So whenever you're ready.
I think the applicant did an excellent job of describing their mission, vision, history, and programmatic offerings. I was particularly impressed by their emphasis on experiencing classical music outside of the concert hall, such as streaming, podcast, and site-specific works. I just think that they demonstrate real ingenuity. And with idea initiatives, I think that they go beyond the statements by providing examples of their work, such as equitable airtime, producing new BIPOC content, and offering free online curricula. And they also demonstrate their commitment to idea initiatives through ongoing staff training. With artistic quality, their stated guided principle of changing the classical music narrative, they highlight their need for high artistic quality because they are offering various methods of delivery. So traditional terrestrial broadcast, digital media, and live performances. And I also applaud their statement, again, that artistic excellence means that there is more BIPOC artists in rotation. Community engagement, I believe that their dedication or their declaration of compensating artists along with providing the artists with prompt and efficient communication and prompt payment speaks to their commitment to their artistic community. Throughout the application, they make the case that they also amplify other arts organizations, and which demonstrates their commitment to the community, and they have a wide range of community partners. So very strong application.
Great. Thank you, Jennifer. So we'll open it up to the full panel for additional comments.
I saw this as an extremely strong application, and I think I just saw it as an organization that took their mission statement as far as they could possibly take it. And probably I would perceive it as constantly viewing the mission statement again and again and seeing how we can kind of implement it in different ways. And like Jennifer said, also like using their mission to cultivate and kind of encourage other art in other organizations and community partnerships.
Thank you, Shelley. Any other comments on this one? Okay. Hearing none, I will ask our panelists to finalize scores. Okay, looks like scores have been finalized. So if we want to bring Mariah back, welcome back, Mariah. All right. Our next application is Fisher's Arts Council, and Mariah, you are the reader for that application. So whenever you're ready.
Great. All right. So this organization had a clear mission statement with supporting programs that are clearly described. I was really curious about Spark of Creativity. It sounds super interesting. I wasn't sure if it was a class or an interactive exhibit or kind of a mix of both. So love the creativity that is in that program. Just wished a little bit more details about it. I can tell this organization is trying to fill a gap in its community with its programs and that they are responding directly to community needs that they see. Also, it's helped with the Fisher's Juneteenth Jubilee shows that it is looking to what the community, not just what they think the community needs are, but what the community wants, what the community thinks its needs are, which I really appreciate. Under idea, I loved their format for creating staple exhibit programming and having those rotating shows that make it helpful for the organization to be intentional about IDEA work. The examples they gave, including the Embracing Black Culture exhibit, shows that they are seeking to involve their community and students in this work also, which is admirable. It's important that they are aware how they can grow, and while they mentioned some ways they could do so, they can improve with having more specific goals. I think one of the ones they listed was get out into the communities. That's great, and I agree. But what is that? What are the action steps there? I did appreciate reading the note about upcoming plans with the Indie Latina artists and how artist networks lead to partnerships like that. Under artistic quality, the involvement of the Cultural Alliance Committee sounds like a good way to screen artwork for excellence and consistency, kind of like a curator. I would like to hear a little bit more about what credentials are required or preferred to be part of that committee. The focus on the artist programming sounds like it supports the artist and helps the audience engage with their work in a deeper way, creating more access in arts. One slight thought that I had, I wasn't sure that this is what was going on, but I thought the answer almost implied that artistic quality could be compromised by ability. And I understand the thinking there, but I think it's important to know that, and to think about how to help artists strive to be the best that they can be according to their ability. You can have artistic excellence at different levels. And beyond providing opportunities to show, also providing educational opportunities and selecting quality artists. Are there critiques or conversations designed for artists to sharpen and encourage and kind of bump and interact with each other? Under community engagement, I think they have a really strong emphasis on evaluation and community feedback. Like, where in other parts of the application, it's clear that they are responding to their community, which has led to improving and even creating new programming. I think that this is shown by how they invest in and get a return on artist relationships. I would say that while evaluation is strong, input can include more than just feedback. I'd like to see the organization talking to not only their current audience members, but perhaps those outside of their audience about what they could be doing to serve them. There seem to be strong community partnerships with schools and artist groups. Are there any things that are happening kind of outside of the arts organization, out of the arts world, that they can work with to bring more people into that fold? I do think that their work is strong and definitely admirable, the way that they put their community first.
Great. Thank you, Mariah. So we'll open it up to the full panel for additional comments on this one.
Just a comment, I think it's really impressive what this organization does, considering its operational budget. They do a lot, and it seems like they do really deep work, which is really commendable.
Thank you, Kyle. Any other questions? Why do I keep saying questions? Comments or observations on this?
I thought they gave a really clear description of their expenses and also the funding priorities that they have. And I also appreciated that they provided the demographic data specifically for Fishers residents, because I thought that was really helpful in taking that into consideration. And then lastly, I was really impressed that their collection of data, I liked that their methodology in feedback and evaluation was qualitative and quantitative, because they had a lot of open-ended responses too. And I know that can be really helpful when applying, not just on a scale of 1 to 10.
Right.
So I thought that was really good.
Thank you, Shelley. Any other comments on this application? Okay, hearing none, I'll ask the panelists to take a minute and finalize their scores. Okay, we're going to take a 5-minute break. 5 minutes, stretch your legs, grab a glass of water break, and we will reconvene and put a fine point on it at 11:16 to pick up with application review. So see everyone here in about 5 minutes. We're still waiting on Shelley, so when she rejoins, we will start. Welcome back, everyone. We'll pick up with our next application, and that is Footlight Musicals. And Shelley, you are the reader for that application whenever you're ready.
Yes, so this one has a show selection committee, diverse in age and ethnicity, expertise, and they kind of included that in their organizational effectiveness as far as the board approval process, multiple criteria, and they listed that specifically. And they also, this one, I liked that they did demonstrate their financial responsibility. They have no paid staff or performers, all volunteer. And they discussed that they've had previous canceled shows because of COVID positive cast members, but they currently have an understudy put in place. So that's kind of how they approach that issue moving forward. For IDEA, they talked about a lot of the accessibility accommodations that they've made and the ASL interpreter. They provide it free every Thursday performance. They're located on the Indigo bus route, and they offer a lot of discounted tickets. Performances for those 65 and older, youth under 18, college students. They have discounted ticket days for all audience members. They talked about trans representation in their casting, and they do collect audience demographic information, and they specifically provided the data. So they did have that detail. Another thing was the recent formation of the DEI committee, specifically for this goal. And I just had a suggestion to include specific action steps for reaching measurable diverse representation goals, both internally and externally. For artistic quality, youth shows are led by educators and seasoned theater professionals, and opportunities for learning and development. And this was evidenced by the internal promotion of roles and responsibilities. So they had a lot of internal movement and promotions. Their membership in Encore Association, and they had a lot of specific mentions of nominations and accolades and awards that they had received, and their conscious effort for diverse representation. And they provided their practices. I did have a suggestion to include more specific educational and professional background information, just some details of their qualifications, to just kind of give a more supportive argument for their artistic quality.
And Shelley, did you mention community engagement? If so, I missed that. Did you talk about community engagement?
Get into that right now.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry, I'm still scrolling. They have the application of feedback from community members, crew, and orchestra, and they cited multiple community partnerships specifically. And I also appreciated the public discussion on social issues for them.
Great, thank you. Now we'll open it up to the full panel for additional comments on this application.
Well, I'll say with community engagement, I liked how they mentioned being part of the Heron Morton neighborhood and how going through the pandemic made them realize that they need to kind of strengthen those ties. I also liked how they talked about, I think, giving discounted or free tickets to veterans, military families, first responders, and even they talked about the homeless community there. So just thought I would note that.
Yeah, I liked those partnerships as well. This might be on me, but I think I was a little confused about the Thursday programming. If I feel like somewhere it said it was free and somewhere it said that they were $15, just discounted tickets. So that might, like I said, that might be on me, but maybe clarifying what the Thursday things are like. This is a small note, but they referenced their Facebook account a couple of times and how they've been using their Facebook to help reach new audiences and increase racial diversity. I noticed that the Facebook account has very little engagement, and that's probably pretty difficult for a volunteer organization, but this is somewhere where a paid employee or someone dedicated to that might help make the organization more accessible to the public.
Right. Thank you, Mariah. Any other comments on this application? All right, I would ask panelists to finalize their scores. Okay, our next application is Freetown Village, and Kyle, you're the reader for that application whenever you're ready.
Sure, thank you. So Freetown Village, starting with their organizational excellence section of their application, I thought that it's clear that their mission and programming are aligned. I appreciated the amount of information that they provided with their current, kind of state with financial sustainability, and their honesty that they're having a hard time meeting their their current operating budget. It seems like they have some good measures in place to work through that. They've worked with some consultants on succession planning, and they've contracted a grant writer that's had a pretty high success rate. I really like that they included the information about kind of where their grant writer has helped, but I would like to understand better like what the total dollar amount is that they're bringing in with those grants, those new grants relative to the operating budget of their organization. Moving on to IDEA, I thought their response was very strong here. They obviously are an organization led by a Black or Indigenous person of color. Their work really focuses on sharing the history of the African American identity, and they are really focused on that, but also looking outwards into the community to try to understand how they engage others in that work as well. Artistic quality, they had really strong descriptions of the programming and the quality of the programming that they provide. I would have liked to have understood better how they source their performers and where there might be opportunities to engage folks strategically at that level moving forward. In community engagement, strong description of input from programming. It seems like it would be very easy to develop a post-evaluation for online programming that could be emailed to participants. I'm just curious, they mentioned that they have issues with, collecting that information. So just curious, to see, if they could do that in the future. So.
Great. Thank you, Kyle. Additional comments or observations by the panelists?
I was impressed by how clearly they described what they do when what they do is really unique. Sometimes when you do something so specific, it's hard to describe, but I think they did a great job of telling us what they do and why. And I think it's fulfilling a really important need. I love the combination of art and history. One comment that I have that I'm looking for. This is a little bit less on the art side of things, but I was just curious about how the history was selected and what is the historical selection process there.
Yeah, 51 degrees. Thank you, Mariah.
Looking at their community partnerships, I was really impressed that they have a lot of recent partnerships and a lot of longstanding ones. So I thought that really speaks to who they are as a community partner. And I also was impressed by their artistic quality in terms of their commitment to the accuracy of the historical representation and the relevant application to the modern day congruences. And they provided some specific examples there. But I think what I was most impressed with in this entire grant was in the very beginning, because they made such a strong argument for the benefits to the community and the long-term impact to, you know, the long-term benefit years to come from their organization. And I think that just started off this grant on a really strong note.
Yeah, Shelley, following up with what you said, I loved it when they said that they're not just changing the lives of their audience, but also their performers. I thought that that was really key. With IDEAI, IDEA, I'm going to say it. I keep tripping over it. The initiatives, I really liked how they defined what underserved means to them. So I liked having that specific criteria. And I really liked how they stated that they go to where people live, work, and socialize. So eliminating that barrier or that hesitation or fear to attend, I just really thought that that was very important.
Thank you, Jennifer. Any other comments on this one? Okay, hearing none, I'll ask the panelists to finalize their scores. Okay, our next application is Hamilton County Artist Association. And Jennifer, you are the reader for that application whenever you're ready.
Okay, I think that the applicant provided a solid understanding of the types of exhibits and programs that are offered and how that ties into their mission. As far as IDEA, I believe that the applicant does state its commitment to inclusivity demonstrated by their teen council. But I think that application would benefit from providing more detailed examples of their IDEA initiatives. For instance, with the satellite galleries, I think that's a great idea, but does this stem from a need to reach those who don't have reliable transportation, just trying to reach out to the rural areas? So just a little bit more information there. And I think it's very great that most of their exhibits are free. Artistic quality. This is one area that I would like just maybe some more specifics about their artists, the qualifications, the types of work, some of the programming, because they mentioned Fairyville, which I think sounds super cool. I'd like to know more about that. With community engagement, they strongly conveyed the numerous and varied collaborations that they have within their community. I would like to know more about engagement with their audience, specifically how they solicit feedback.
Great, thank you, Jennifer. Any other comments, observations by the panelists?
Mine were really consistent. She pretty much just read mine. The only thing I had that was just a little bit different was at the very last section with the community, when they talked about the scholarships provided to local high school students. I would have liked to heard or learned a little bit more specific information about that program. They did touch on it, but I didn't learn too much about it, and I would have liked to have learned more about it. In the beginning, they did a really good job of, I think, teaching me what made them different and how long they've been around, and they're the only juried fine arts nonprofit in the county, and that scholarship probably, I think, would have made them a little bit more unique too, and I would have liked to have learned a little bit more about it.
Great, thank you, Shelley. Other comments? All right, hearing none, I'll ask our panelists to finalize their scores. Okay, our next application is the Hancock County Arts Council, and Mariah, you are the reader for that application whenever you're ready.
Great. Okay, so again, or another volunteer-led organization that I think is doing really great work, and loved hearing about their different programs. My biggest questions under the organizational excellence section are what exactly the memberships are for, or what is included in the membership, and how hiring a director fits into their proposed budget. I think it's a great goal, and they laid out their plan for success clearly, but their proposed budget for this year doesn't seem to reflect confidence in that plan, which I know it's hard to figure that out. But I think they're on the right path. Just would have liked a little bit more clarity, no confidence there. Under idea, I think that there's good work being done here. There was a section about the entry fee that I think could have used a little bit of clarification. They said many don't have an entrance fee, but an entry fee, but some may. I wasn't sure what that meant. And they do say that they have a process for application of artists can't pay, which is great for removing barriers. Just wanting to make sure that they know that that option is available to them. There are some good long-term goals listed here. I think that the application does ask specifically about long-term goals, but I'd love to hear more about how short-term goals, how they're being broken down into actionable steps. I do think that utilizing Facebook groups is a relatively attainable short-term goal that they listed. If they are planning on doing that, what would it take to subsidize classes? They talk about that. It's a good goal, but not sure that there's a plan there yet. I loved the example of the way that they are using the coloring book to serve their community and connect with people. It helps me understand how the organization is using art to welcome new residents into their county. I also appreciated hearing about the organization's belief that arts can champion racial diversity. I think that's absolutely true, and I would have appreciated a few examples of how they're doing that. I think the detailed examples of age diversity were really helpful and encouraging. So maybe more details like those in other areas as well as maybe a bit more information about the curatorial process and the acceptance process. Under artistic quality, I think they gave some great detailed examples that demonstrate how they strive for artistic excellence. They could almost simplify by just including more about the selection process for the artists they work with, but I do appreciate the examples. They also demonstrate how they are using local artists in their network to achieve their mission. So, looking at what relationships they have and using that as a great and effective way to support their community. I think that they mentioned writing classes, which I think are great. I wasn't sure that they fit under the organization's mission, but just a little bit more clarity there I think would have been helpful. Under community engagement, I'm really impressed by the active and committed committee members. They demonstrate the community's desire for this organization and their work and the belief of what they are doing. And the student exhibits, they talk about strategically bringing in parents. I think that's a great way to think about, again, serving your community, also in an authentic way, also benefiting the organization. I would like to hear a little bit more about how they engage or include non-members, since the membership structure function was a little vague to me. You are probably doing this, just a little bit more details about how. For example, the Vaughter exhibit sounds like an impressive undertaking that's important for your artistic community, and does the community engagement for the audience outside of your built-in artistic community go beyond marketing? Was my biggest question about that section, but overall, loved reading about the importance of the work that you're doing and your belief in your work and the demonstrated commitment.
Thank you, Mariah. So we'll open it up to the full panel for additional comments on this application.
I think you provided a really thorough, it ticked everything that I kind of thought, but I really like that emphasis on the local artist and like, not, from the past, but also they're changing demographics, and really that focus on local, I thought was really cool. And I liked that they're looking, they're branching out. It's not just painting, they're looking at other things, like you said, felting and like different classes. So yeah, I just think that's very cool.
Thanks, Jennifer. Any other comments on this application? Okay, I'll ask our panelists to finalize their scores. Okay. Our next application is Hancock County Children's Choir, and Shelley, you are the first reader for that application whenever you're ready.
Yeah, this grant gave a lot of detail, I think, really strong grant. I thought they started off with a really thorough explanation of their programming and their instruction, including the benefits to the students. A strong argument for the community need, citing some specific examples and their current challenges, which really explain the motivation behind forming and maintaining the organization in general. I thought they talked about the positive impact and who they were. I would have liked to see just a little bit more specific board information, just like a staff structure description, maybe like titles, number of positions, stuff like that, just a little bit more detail. But they talked about the additional support through the network of the parents and the community members. And I thought they did a good job of demonstrating just the financial stability. The doubled endowment fund was a really good argument for just the stability. For IDEA, they do have a plan in place to eliminate financial barriers, including up to 100% coverage. And they have an increase in serving special needs population, including physical disabilities and neurodiversity inclusion. Their distribution goes to all residents within the local radius. And it said racially and culturally diverse representation, could have been a little bit more detailed. Goal of partnering with basic needs service organizations to better identify potential sources of recruitment. Currently networking with the intent of creating a referral service. So it sounds like they have the potential to really, reach some new populations, and they have that target in mind. And they're planning on kind of more of an outreach. Artistic qualities. They have had some opportunities to sing at some really notable location and exposure to some world-renowned composers, which I thought was great to mention and really justify. Multiple specific examples of staff qualifications and educational credentials. So they did a really good job of providing detail for that part of the artistic quality. And they provided a wide array of training methods and musical instruments. So very broad there. And expansion to social practices, language, mannerisms, appreciation of cultural value and historic significance. And that part really impressed me because I saw that as kind of above and beyond for a children's chorus in terms of just the definition. I thought like they wanted to be more than just a textbook definition. For community engagement, they did have a strong network of community relationships, and including the recent addition of a public school liaison. And their collaborative efforts have increased now in terms of awareness of emotional needs in the context of senior and veterans populations. So I thought that was kind of a unique target for a children's choir, and especially for that community in terms of demographics for Hancock County. Application of parent, volunteer, and audience feedback, including specific examples of process improvement. And again, I like that specific example of, you know, how we've modified based on evaluations and feedback, and enrichment sessions for music educators, potential for additional collaborative opportunities. So I like that they're kind of including the music teachers, both in their feedback and then potential to serve those as well.
Fantastic. Thank you, Shelley. So we'll open it up to the full panel for additional comments on this application.
I thought it was a really strong application. And my one comment, in the organizational excellence, I loved the paragraph kind of talking about the description of the opening night, the performance, kind of all the feelings that the students might have. I just thought it was really vivid and gave you like a sense of the organization. So I really like that.
Great. Thank you, Jennifer. Any other comments on this one?
I was impressed by the way they balance things. They talk about fun being an important thing that for the kids, but they also don't sacrifice artistic quality for that and excellence. And then they're very willing to support the kids also with their life mentoring skills. I thought that was an important part of what they do, especially when some of their kids, like they talk about, need some of that, and they're kind of a place for offering these kids some services even beyond artistic services that they might not be getting in their home or other communities.
Great. Thank you, Mariah. Kyle.
Yeah, I agree with everything that's already been said. To critique just a little bit on the artistic quality, you know, they talk about measurable objectives and a spiral review process to evaluate their kids, their students. And I would have liked to have seen kind of how they perform against those measures.
Great, thank you. Any other comments from panelists? All right, hearing none, I'll ask you to finalize your scores. Okay, looks like we're ready to move on. Our next application is Hendricks Civic Theater. And Kyle, you're the reader for that one, so whenever you're ready.
Sure, absolutely. So looking at this organization, and full disclosure, it's just total coincidence that my last name is Hendricks. I have no connection to that county or this organization. I thought they gave a strong description of their organizational mission and the work that they do towards that mission. You know, one thing I noticed is that the majority of their operational work seems very heavily dependent on their board of directors volunteer time. And just curious, you know, is that sustainable? Does it provide quality experiences? And so it would have been helpful to have just understood a little bit more specifically around, you know, the sustainability and quality in that way. Moving on to IDEA. The organization, their actions around inclusion, diversity, equity, and access seem limited. I think, you know, that I'm sure is partly due to the fact that it's a, you know, all volunteer-led organization. They do mention that a dedicated administrator would help in these areas. Moving on to artistic quality. Overall, you know, the quality of the work seems, fairly good, considering again that it's, an all volunteer led group. Thought they could do more to involve more experienced artists to educate the newer artists that are coming on board. There were minimal examples of how the artistic quality was strengthened for first time actors, directors, set designers, etc. And then community engagement, they self-identified that this was an area in which they lack. I think they have some good informal channels for feedback set up, but they could go further to establish formal feedback channels and processes for how they would implement that in their future programming and organizational work moving forward.
Great, thank you, Kyle. Additional comments from the panelists?
I do think that they're kind of identifying the sustainability long-term issue. I think where they have talked about, their need for an executive director long-term and the position, I think they may have kind of channeled that as a solution, maybe. But I also liked that the new practice of pairing with a different nonprofit for each show as a way to kind of form new nonprofit sponsorships, because it aligned the fundraising with the promotional effort. And I thought that was an interesting way to kind of start their collaboration, if you will, with the community.
Great, thank you, Shelley. Any additional comments by the panel?
This might be a little specific, but one thing is just to make sure that you are fully answering the questions, like almost breaking your answers down into the sub questions that the IAC provides will help us understand how you're answering each specific question and will help us get a better idea of your organization and making sure that the grantee is on the same page as the panelists in terms of what information is being provided.
Thank you, Mariah. I think that's a great point. The application has questions lettered A, B, and C, and going through and starting with A and answering question A can be really helpful for panelists. Is that what I'm hearing from you? Yeah.
Yes, thank you.
Yep, thank you. Thanks for that comment. Any additional for this application? All right, I would ask our panelists to take a second and finalize their scores for this application. Okay, our next application is Hendrix Symphonic Society. Jennifer, you are the reader for that application, so whenever you're ready.
All right. The applicant provided a clear description of their mission, organization structure, and their performance schedule. I think they do a solid job of explaining how they provide an avenue for local musicians to showcase their talent, along with providing their residents with quality performances. The applicant does a good job of describing their history with IDEA and how they have become more committed to implementing IDEA initiatives, such as the creation of their diversity statement. And they also recognize that with symphonic choirs like this, it's largely been white males who have been involved. And so they're working hard to bring more women and other groups into the fold, and they do have a new female creative director. They do provide scholarships for students and low-cost shows on Sunday afternoons. I think this was a direct feedback from maybe one of their surveys, so more seniors could attend. But I would like to have some more information about how they hope to implement IDEA initiatives in regards to selecting talent and attracting more diverse audiences. I think they did an exemplary job of detailing the qualifications of the staff, along with emphasizing that acceptance into the organization is by audition only. They highlight their rigorous rehearsal schedule for the performers. So it is very clear that they are committed to artistic excellence. One improvement here that I believe is if they could describe more their educational offerings to the community. And lastly, community engagement. I believe it's evident that they have a strong relationship to the local schools and also the Arts Consortium. I would like to have some more information about their interaction with the audience and how they implement any solicited or unsolicited feedback.
Great, thank you, Jennifer. So we'll open it up to the full panel for additional comments on this application. Okay, hearing none, I would ask the panelists to finalize their scores for this application. This concludes the FY24-25 Arts Organization Support Advisory Review Panel. I want to thank the panelists so much for their time in reviewing and discussing these applications today. Applicants will be notified of the status of their grant following the June quarterly business meeting. If you have any questions, please contact your regional arts partner. Thank you so much for watching today. Enjoy the rest of your day and take care.